Welcome to another edition of the Hoop Scoop. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, well, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times yet again. Red Raiders opened up Big 12 play with a resounding win over Oklahoma State on Saturday, but then followed that up with a tough 57-52 loss to a top 5 Baylor squad Tuesday night. I guess, mighty Joe, what's your main takeaway? Obviously, big 35-point win over Oklahoma State, but then the tough 5-point loss where, man, it seemed like everything was just a struggle offensively for the Red Raiders. What was your overall takeaway?
Yeah, well, the offense is still, as Beard like to say, a work in progress. They got their ups, they got their downs. But the one good thing is that the defense is there again.
Yeah.
All right, it took a little while, but it is really there. They played 2 outstanding defensive games in a row. So you got that to hang your hat on, and I've got a hat to hang that on as well. So the hat. So that's very good to see that it's not a surprise necessarily. That's the DNA of this program is defense, but it took a little while for it to come into place, but it's there now. And that defense should be on par with what we've seen these last couple of years, which means that Tech is, again, one of the best defensive teams in the country. There's no doubt about it. So is Baylor, by the way. They're very, very darn good. So you got that going for you. Now, depth is an issue for this team. It really is. Yeah. The couple of the bench guys played pretty well against Oklahoma State. But then there was nothing against Baylor.
They didn't get an opportunity against Baylor.
They barely got an opportunity.
Now, I want to point out, I heard the post-game press conference where you asked Coach Beard about, is this a concern moving forward? Maybe not right now, but later on in Big 12 play that your guys may be fatigued. And he simply said, no, I'm going to go ahead and jump out there and say I'm not buying that. Well, why else does he like to play a lot of guys? But then they keep them fresh, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. I think it could be an issue, especially, they're one injury away from basically having just starters and not really have anybody else to rely on.
Yeah, that's right. And, with the way Texas Tech loves to play hard particularly on the defensive end, you need to be able to roll some guys in. Right now, basically, you got a 6-man rotation.
Yes.
Chris Clark is like a 6th starter.
Right.
But that's it. That's him and your starters, and that's all you got to really count on right now. And I don't think that hurt him too much last night. And this is a long season, man, and it's a grind, and teams get kind of worn down.
Yeah.
And those that have the depth are going to be a little bit fresher later on in the season. It would be a different matter if Texas Tech played a lot of zone defense. You play zone, you can kind of stay out of foul trouble a little bit, a lot.
Sure.
And you don't necessarily have to expend quite as much energy, but that's not what Tech plays. Tech is not a zone defensive team. They're man, intense defense, and so this is an issue right now. And what about foul trouble? If that happens from time to time. TJ Holyfield has had his struggles with fouls. Shannon occasionally as well. Basically, you really need at least one of these guys. And I'm talking about McCullough, Savrasov, Nadolny, or possibly Avery Benson.
Yeah, why hasn't Benson played so? Had such a great game against Louisville, was a major cog in that game, and then now it seems like he can't get on the court. Well, what's your theory on that, Joe?
Yeah, is he a one-hit wonder? I know he's got the athletic ability. I know he plays really, really hard. But he's obviously, there's something going on there that Beard doesn't completely trust him. I don't know if he feels like he can get any sort of consistent productivity from him. And it's like, is he kind of a warm body out there right now? They need somebody who can score a little bit. That's particularly last night. You got to, 52 points. They have 17 at halftime, 18, something like that.
18 or 19, I think.
Yeah, 19. You're struggling to score against a really, really good defensive team. So who off of the bench can bring you some offense? Benson, I guess is as good an option as you've got.
Well, he's at least shown that he can knock down open threes, right? Which is saying a lot. There are some starters who are struggling to do that right now.
Yeah, I know. And another thing that puzzles me is Nadolny not getting on the court a little bit more. In fact, he didn't play at all. against Baylor.
He was a scratch, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he was looked like he was perfectly healthy and fine and ready to go, but he just didn't get on the court. And now he's not a jump shooter or anything like that. But man, he plays as hard as anybody on the team. He's very, very tough. He can, as he showed against Oklahoma State, he can get into the paint.
Yes.
And that might have been a little bit useful against those Baylor guards who are great defensive guards.
They're all up on him, too.
I know. And so if, I thought maybe Nadoli could have got in there and, if he can break that defense down a little bit, which he may be able to do better than any other guard on the roster, perhaps, with the exception of Ramsey, although driving hasn't been that much of his game. He adds a little bit of an element there, and the defense has to maybe contract on him when he penetrates, and then he can kick. And maybe Morrow gets a little bit more of an open look, although he missed some open ones last night as well. So, it's a little bit of a puzzle to me why Nadoli isn't playing a little bit more. I guess you could argue for Benson as well. McCullough looks like he's got a crisis of confidence right now. And he's just a turnover machine. When he comes in, a turnover's coming, pretty much. I'm sorry to say it, but that's the way it is. So, and Savrasov, I think he's a guy who can help you on the glass a little bit. I think he
got just destroyed in the couple minutes he played on the glass, but so did everybody else for Tech. And Beard, boy, yanked him in a hurry because he was really getting pushed around.
Yeah, so Baylor can do that to you. I mean, they got two bigs who Gillespie and Vital. And Vital, how big is he? I don't know, he's 6'5", but he plays like he's about 6'10". So
I don't. While we're talking about rebounding, that was the key to the game to me. Rebounding. I mean, they got blitzed 44-25, and it seemed like Tech played great defense. They forced Baylor into 20 turnovers, but that was negated, that advantage, by all the second chance points. I think it was 14-8. And I think Baylor won by 5. So I mean, there you go. Just and I'm kind of surprised that it didn't lead to more points for Baylor because I mean, almost 20 more rebounds. And a lot of them were on the offensive end. Tech would play good defense, but they couldn't finish. The final job on defense is to clear the board, and they just couldn't do it. So
yeah, absolutely, and that has been off and on a little bit of an issue for Texas Tech defensive rebounding. Now overall, their rebounding margin has actually been very good. I haven't checked the stats after this game. Obviously, it took a hit, but I think they were close to +7 coming into the Baylor game, +6.9 or something like that. Yeah. So I think maybe overall they're a pretty good rebounding team, but they're not real consistent. And, I mean, Baylor, listen, they're, in addition to being one of the very best defensive teams in the country, is one of the best rebounding teams. And so it was a kind of a battle of wills up front, and Baylor flat out just dug Tech up. And I think I'm trying to remember, there was a recent game as well, may have been Bakersfield, where there was some of that going on too. Tech had some struggles on the defensive glass. So that's going to be an item of emphasis from this point out, I've got a feeling.
Yeah, and soon too, because next up for Texas Tech, the Red Raiders are going to Morgantown to play West Virginia, who honestly, they may have a better front court and better rebounders. They probably do than Baylor does. So this issue isn't going away. Now, there are some good things. I think they could still force West Virginia into a lot of turnovers. They have Jamias Ramsey, and West Virginia doesn't. That's huge. Who offensively right now, I mean, it's hard to imagine this team without him. I know they beat Louisville without him, but to me that sounds like a dream, or like from seasons ago. I can't believe they did that still. Well, just what exactly is this challenge facing Tech? I believe it's 5 o'clock Central Time in Morgantown against number 17 West Virginia, who lost to Kansas, but as well as Texas Tech beat up on Oklahoma State earlier this week.
Yeah, obviously you start with the big boys up front, Sheboy and Derek Culver, 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", big, beefy guys. I would say Culver is a little bit more of a mobile guy. Sheboy is kind of explosive. He can really, in some ways, reminds me of Sagaba Konate a little bit. There's some resemblances there. They got another guy who had not a transfer, he was like kicked out of Arkansas, Gabe Asaboyan, for some sort of infraction, and Huggins scooped in there and snatched him up real quick. And he's not. He's almost like, he reminds me just a little bit of Vital in that he's about 6'5", 6'6", very strong, physical effort guy. When those three guys are on the court at the same time, I mean, it's almost too much to deal with up front, and Tech has some issues there. So Tech can't match up front with those guys. They're going to have to win this game other ways. As you said, forcing turnovers. Listen, West Virginia's guards have not been all that spectacular this year. Emmett Williams, who's kind of the small forward, has not been playing very well at all. So basically it's going to be kind of Texas Tech's backcourt versus their front court, and what that means is that Edwards and Morrow have to start getting it together. I mean, if they have, Edwards had a decent game last night against Baylor, not bad, a good all-around game, I think.
Yeah, he did.
But both of those guys are going to have to play well. Morrow is going to, if he gets some shots, he's going to have to knock him down, and he will get some shots. But you kind of worry a little bit about his confidence going into this one. Because, to me in the second half last night, he looked a little bit shaken. He just couldn't figure out what was going on, why the shots.
His form was even off. You notice how somebody like his follow through was like his arm. I've never seen him shoot like that. The guy has great mechanics. Like you said before on these hoop scoops, Joe. You want your kids to watch how he shoots, his mechanics, but that was not the case. I mean, he looked all over the place. And at this point, you have to say, confidence. Does he have the yips? That kind of deal.
Yeah. And this also, I mean, come to think of it, gets back to the depth situation, because when the mechanics start breaking down a little bit, you wonder if fatigue is a factor in that. And he was having to run and scramble and move without the ball like crazy against Davion Mitchell, who's as good a defensive guard as there is in the country, just about, basically.
He was him and Jemias were the two best players on the court last night.
That's right. And so that was a tough deal. And, it would have been nice, maybe, it might have helped him out a little bit if you had somebody else that you could throw in there and give Morrow maybe 10 minutes of rest, but you just don't have anybody. So, that's going to be a recurring issue, until somebody steps up there, and so we'll see what happens against West Virginia. But I think Morrow shooting the ball like he normally does is going to be a big key to Tech having a chance to win that game.
I don't know about you, and this is final point here. After the game ended and, Baylor led for most of the game and all that, and I know it was a loss at home, which doesn't happen a lot for Texas Tech, I still wasn't, devastated. I was like, this is a good team. Baylor, I think, is legit. I thought that going into the game. I certainly feel that after the game. I do feel like it was a learning experience. I know fans don't like moral victories, and I'm not saying that's what this is. I'm just saying I felt like, okay, you played that bad and you lost by 5 to a top 5 team in the Big 12. I think Tech's going to have success this year. I think we're going to see more up and down play. I think this is just what we're going to see from this Red Raiders team throughout the season. Is they're going to look really good? I think they're going to look really bad on any given night. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that was not a bad loss.
You can't say they look good, though.
No, they didn't.
On the boards,
missing
all those free throws.
Right.
Tech turned their ball over a lot as well. I mean,
the defense was really, really good. It's about as good as it gets. The bottom line is they went toe-to-toe with perhaps the future Big 12 champ. And it was a one-possession game with less than a minute to play.
29 seconds.
29 seconds to play. So, I mean, you were right there. You get a stop. You get a bucket. You're in overtime.
Yep.
And you can – home teams, I think, have an advantage in overtime.
Yeah.
So, it was right there. It was that close for the taking. But I still believe – listen, this loss – was not as bad as that loss to Iowa State at home last year. Iowa State was not as good as Baylor right now. So I consider Texas Tech a top 25 team, a legitimate top 25 team. Now, if they lose to West Virginia, which I guess is probable, then they drop out of the top 25. But they're going to be hanging around the edge of the in and out all season long. And probably wind up, I'm guessing, in the NCAA tournament something like a 5 or 6 seed. And that's fine. If they can get the bench coming around a little bit, get a couple of guys to step up, then they can still make a run in the NCAA tournament. My spirits are not dampened. I'm still very optimistic about this team, and then extremely optimistic about next year's team.
Brighter things are ahead or in store for the Red Raiders this season. But Joe, great stuff from you as always. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.